In this lecture, we are going to talk about constructors and constructor overloading. So first of all, as we have learned before, the constructor is called when an object of a class is created. So whenever we instantiate a given class with the new keyword, this is when the constructor is going to be called. The name of the constructor matches the name of the class. It is very similar to a method. What's crucial that there is no return type as far as a constructor is concerned. So all classes have constructors by default. If you do not create a class constructor yourself, the Java compiler creates a default constructor. The default constructor doesn't have any parameters. Each time an object is created using the new keyword, at least one constructor is going to be invoked. It could be the default constructor or it could be the constructor that we have specified. Usually we invoke the constructor in order to assign initial values to the instance variables or data members of the given class. If we write a constructor, then the compiler is not going to create the default constructor. So for example, we have a class, example class, and the default constructor has the same name as the class itself. It doesn't have any parameters and it doesn't have a return type. Okay, so as far as the default constructor is concerned, in this case, as far as my class is concerned, as you can see, we have a single integer instance variable, but we haven't specified the constructor explicitly, and this is why Java is going to create the default constructor in the background. So if we instantiate the new class and we print out the value of x, this is why it is going to be 0, because Java is going to create the default constructor in the background and it initializes class variables to their default values. For primitive types it is 0 and for objects it is null. If we specify the constructor on our own without a given parameter, it is going to be very similar to a default constructor, but here we can define a specified value. For example, we initialize the value of x to be 33. So it initializes class variables with fixed values for all objects created by this constructor. So if we print out the value of x again, this is why the value is going to be 33. And we can have parameterized constructors. A constructor that has parameters is known as parameterized constructor. We can initialize fields of the class with the constructor. So in this case, we get a given value I, and we set the value of x to be the value of I. So this is why if we instantiate the class with the new keyword, we have to specify that I value. Here it is 99. So if we print out the value of x, this is why it has the value 99. Sometimes there is a need of initializing an object in different ways. This can be done using the so-called constructor overloading. So constructor overloading is a technique in Java in which a class can have any number of constructors that differ in parameter list. The compiler differentiates these constructors by the number of parameters in the list and their type. So here, as far as the person class is concerned, as you can see, we have two constructors. The first constructor has just a single string n, and this is how we initialize the name variable. But again, we can define a constructor without any parameters, and here we can initialize the name to be unknown. So if we instantiate the person with a string, then the name value is going to be Kevin. Otherwise, if we instantiate the class without defining the string value, this is when this constructor is going to be called, so the name value is going to be unknown. This is called constructor overloading because we can define several constructors within the same class, as you can see. Overloaded constructors often call each other. One common technique is to have each constructor add one parameter until getting to the constructor that does all the work. It is called constructor chaining. So as you can see, my class has three variables x, y, and z. We can define a constructor for the x value, and then we call the constructor with two parameters. So with the help of this, we are going to code a constructor with two values x and 10. As you can see, this constructor is going to be called with the value of x and value of y, and then again we call a constructor with three parameters x, y and 100. And finally, this constructor does all the work, which means that it sets the x value to be the x value, y value to be the y value, and z value to be the z value. So this is called constructor chaining. We can instantiate a class with a single value. It is going to be the value of x, then y is going to be 10, and z is going to be 100. So this is why the final result as far as c.x, c.y, and c.z is concerned is going to be 3, 10, and 100. So this is what we are going to talk about in the coming lectures. Thanks for watching.